to check out his podcast. Go to the James Altucher Show, consistently ranked in the top for business podcasts in a variety of different categories. 50 million downloads. I think we have like, I don't even know, like not even a tenth of that. So he's just amazing to listen to. Very, very exciting. His new book, which I'll show, we'll put links in there. The one that I was looking at recently is Reinvent Yourself. Love the cover with the astronaut. So we'll put the links in there, and then after James is off, I'll show all of this by video. And definitely check out jamesaltucher.com. James, one of the articles that I read quite a bit when I was going through like my career change was living life is better than dying in college. And so, one of the things I've watched you write about a lot is investing in the right things, whether it's yourself, etc. Maybe you could just start by telling us why investing in academia or the academic career path in general, even at the undergraduate level, is a mistake for many and is not sustainable in today's world anymore.
Right, and I think the key is the word many, because not any one solution can fit everyone. I'm not, who am I to say nobody should ever go to college? But I think there's two issues. One's societal, one's personal to the individual as opposed to societal for society. The societal issue is that the backing of student loans, while they have good intentions, the government helping young people get an education by lending them money, it's sort of that's sort of this 50-year plan that's backfired. And so what ends up happening is college tuitions, because they know the government is going to pay them, college presidents have raised their tuitions every single year higher than inflation for 50 years in a row. And so now 20 million people are in massive debt. That's the entire middle class is in massive debt. People below the middle class get financial aid. People above the middle class don't pay, don't have loans. And so you get this massive income inequality in society, so that an entire generation of children, 22-year-olds, they have to work, at jobs they don't like in order to pay down the debt, instead of being innovative and being the next generation of entrepreneurs. Now, on an individual level, it's very important, if you find out, if you're lucky enough to know your passions and the things you love, then just explore those. You don't have to do a French requirement and a science requirement and a this requirement and that requirement. Study where your passions take you and start putting in the 10,000 hours so you can be among the greatest in the world, and you can build your subculture in what you love, and you could develop young in what you love doing. I don't really remember. Well, let me just give you an example. I went to a very good school for computer science. Then I went to graduate school for computer science. So I was a good student, good enough to get into graduate school. And then when I got my very first job as a computer programmer, I was so bad at my job, they had to send me to remedial school for computer programming just to catch up to all the other employees. And it wasn't really that hard of a job. It was just my first job out of, and I went to I was a good student. I went to the best schools, and I didn't really learn anything in what I was passionate about. Now, that's anecdotal. Does that apply to everyone? No, but it applies to a lot of people. If I want to be a writer, you should start writing. You don't need to study, Shakespeare if you don't like Shakespeare. Read the books you love and start writing every day. That's the only way to be a great writer. If you want to be a great musician, yeah, a tutor helps, but do what the Beatles did and start playing 20 hours a day in some, random nightclub until you get great. Like that, the only way to get great at something is to do something. And sure, having mentors and tutors and teachers help, but college is not the environment for that. College, you take, 5 different classes on different subjects a semester, and then, some people go to parties at night, some people, other things, and there's a lot of different reasons for college, but it's not just education. And if you're focused on education and being the best at what you love doing, college is not the right place to go.
Yeah, and so for those of you listening, James's path, he went to grad school. I mean, it's very similar to a lot of you. He was in STEM. A lot of you are in STEM, and he got into industry, and there was kind of a disconnect. So what we're trying to talk about here is, okay, how do you make that transition? And for most of you, you're very comfortable in academia. You haven't even made that transition yet. And, the pain isn't enough for you to, finally make the jump. And, this is something you talk a lot about, James, and what I wanted to talk about next was, how can you maybe increase the pain so that you make that transition before it's too late, right? So you've changed career paths. You've had to hit rock bottom before to make a change, as some of the articles and the things you've spoken about that I enjoy the most. What could somebody who's on a similar path that you were, where they went to the graduate school level, they're trying to change careers, get into something that they don't feel, they have imposter syndrome, they don't feel like they can excel in that different career path, and so they stay where they're comfortable. What can they do to push themselves, either psychologically or maybe even put them in a position where they have to go forward, they have to change careers?
I mean, I think that's such a great question, and there's not a one sentence answer. There's kind of like a pyramid of answers. So first you have to build the foundation. You have to build the foundation of where you're able to physically and psychologically make a change from something you've already invested a lot of time and energy and maybe money into. And that foundation is, if you're saying to yourself, okay, I need to make a big change, you got to be ready for it. You've got to be physically healthy. You've got to be psychologically healthy, which means, eliminate the toxic people in your life, eliminate the people who say, no, you can't do that, or no, you shouldn't make that change. That's such a bad decision for you, or they try to put you down. So that's really important. It doesn't sound like, I'm not giving you like a tactical thing, like here's what you study, here's what website you go to. But this thing is even more, eliminating toxic people and being healthy are probably the two most important things you could do to prepare the foundation to make a change. Then practice your creativity. Creativity is a muscle like any other muscle. So make sure you're being creative every day. And most people aren't focused on being creative every day. I guarantee you, within 3 to 6 months of even just writing down 10 ideas a day, you will have your idea muscle will be an idea machine. So you need that in place as well. Then, for whatever you want to learn, identify the micro skills of what you learn. As an example, let's say you want to be good at business. There's no such thing as business skill. Business skill is divided into micro skills. There's negotiating, there's sales, there's product development, there's execution, there's monetizing, there's marketing, there's leadership and management and motivation. So these are all skills you have to develop to have this umbrella skill of business. For instance, in the past couple years, I've wanted to learn to be a stand-up comedian, just for fun, just to get myself out of my comfort zone, because it helps in other areas of life. And I realized there's no such skill as stand-up comedy. There's humor, there's likability, there's crowd work, there's stage presence. You have to be good at all of these micro skills. Okay, so that's the next layer. The next layer after that, Frank Shamrock, who's probably the best, ultimate fighting champion of all time, he told me this, and I found that it's true for every big change in my life. Find your plus minus equal. The plus is a mentor to teach you, and that might be a real mentor, it might be a virtual mentor through books and videos, doesn't matter. Your equals are the team of people around you who are also striving to succeed, and they challenge you and you challenge them, and you compare notes and you exchange ideas, and you grow up as a scene with them. And that happens in every area of life. If you look back at even the computer age, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, they were all hanging out together practically as barely more than teenagers, and they created the entire computer age. So every industry has this, the equals. And then there's the minus, which is you can't really know anything unless you can explain it. So make sure you can always explain at like a third grade level what it is you're learning, and find people to teach and share what you're learning as you're learning it. And you'll find you'll learn much better, and you'll learn the nuances much faster. So plus minus equal. And then then the final top of this pyramid is just do it. The Nike expression, just simply do what you love. If you love writing, write a lot. If you love computer program a lot. If you want to start businesses, start side hustles or businesses, or do whatever you can to monetize your interests. And if you love programming, download some software and modify it. Don't start from scratch, but modify a piece of software so you can just start doing things and so on.
Yeah, so I think that's great. And the plus equal minus thing, I don't know where I first heard that. Maybe it was your show, but it's easy to forget about the minus one because you think that there's maybe no value in mentoring others, but one of the best ways to learn is to teach. And so I think it's a great model.
And again, even if you're new at an area, well, let's say you just start computer programming, so you're not an expert, you're not a professor, you're not a PhD, you haven't been doing it that long. Heck, write some code and explain to somebody what the code does and why the code does it. And then you understand again the nuances, and maybe you start, and then they ask questions, and those questions make you think of things that you haven't thought of before. So you don't have to be an expert to find your minuses and start explaining. You become an expert by finding your minuses.
Yeah, absolutely. And to make it practical for a lot of you, you're looking for a job. We talk about publishing on LinkedIn, blog articles. Learn something or the field you want to go into, explain it, write a quick review, publish it. It increases your exposure, and it falls into that plus minus model too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, James, last question, and I really appreciate it. I want to respect your time here. Some people on here are really, I don't know, and I don't know, I know you've maybe experienced this too. You limit yourself. You get built up around a lot of limiting beliefs. I think academia, in some senses, at the highest level, can really brainwash you into thinking that there's one path for you to be successful at, and you don't even realize it. But you've defined success in one way, and there's no other ways for you to be successful. And you're in this kind of like this dark place where you don't really see a way out. You've lost your purpose. You've realized that your current path's a dead end. I know you went through this framework, but is there an even deeper, darker level where there's something you can do to just shake that off and show yourself that there's possibilities?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's understanding, the idea. This is a 2 million-year-old idea or longer, which is that we're tribal animals. So we get into a setting, and like, for instance, I loved academic computer science. I went to graduate school for it. And so then I put myself in that tribe, and the professors who are famous for publishing a lot, they're at the top of that tribe. They're the alpha of that tribe. Then maybe the up and coming professors are next, and the genius students are the next. And then of course there was me at the omega level of students. And but then we move into another subculture, and it's a natural instinct to put yourself in that tribe. Like, oh, investors, do I run a big hedge fund, a medium-sized hedge fund? Are my returns good? Blah, blah, blah. Or stand-up comedy. Do I have a Netflix special? Am I on Comedy Central? Am I on Stephen Colbert? Or am I just performing at comedy clubs and nobody's laughing? So natural instinct to place yourself in a tribe. But that's all artificial. Nobody cares if you're making jokes in front of 30 people in a dark comedy club and no one's laughing. It's an opportunity to learn. So whenever I find myself in a subculture or a hierarchy where I'm feeling that those neurochemicals released, like the cortisol that happens when you feel like you're slipping from the tribe, you're losing status, I diversify tribes. So, okay, tonight wasn't so good for stand-up comedy. I'm going to focus on businesses, or I'm going to focus on writing, or I'm going to focus on investing. So make sure you diversify the tribes that you're in, and also just be aware that these feelings you have, whether it's success or failure, is all related to whether you feel the tribe is accepting you or rejecting you. And try to just be aware of that so you can, again, diversify from the tribes. And just awareness is the key to freedom. You want to just be your own self and pave your own way and avoid all of these, primal, neurochemical instincts.
Yeah, and for those of you watching where you've made academia your only tribe for the last 25 years, it might seem simple, but it really can be. Just diversify your tribe. Don't link your entire success to that tribe. So please thank.
Exactly. Don't link your success to one tribe.
Perfect. Thank you, James, for your time. I really appreciate it. Please thank James in the chat box if you're one of our special members that gets to join us in Zoom. And then if you're watching us publicly, please thank James as well. Please check out his book. The one that I love the most, I'm just going to show it here. I hope it's okay to say. Choose Yourself is my favorite book. So check out that book. I would start there, and then you can dig in. He's such a prolific writer. check out his new book, Reinvent Yourself. I think you have that for free on Kindle right now on Amazon. Maybe I was just seeing.
I think so, yeah, for Amazon Prime.
Yeah, Amazon Prime. And I'll show all these after James leaves. But please thank him again. James, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
All right, so thank you all for telling James. Thank you for his time. Please go to James's Facebook page. He is, again, I like the word prolific because he writes so much. He is extremely intelligent, as you just found out. Check him out on social media too. His content is phenomenal. Go to his Facebook page. Check out his books. A lot of them are for free. He just adds so much value. Doesn't try to sell you on anything, and just adds value. Really, again, not just a writer and a journalist for a lot of large media sites, but also he's worked with just amazing people. If you check out his podcast, The James Altucher Show, you'll see the quality of guests that he has on his show. It's consistently ranked as one of the top podcasts on Apple in a variety of categories. So big thanks for having him on. I'm going to show a couple of the sites that I talked about while he was here on my screen very quickly. So this is his book. You can get this for free on Kindle right now, on Kindle Unlimited. Reinvent Yourself. This is his newest book. The book that I showed is Choose Yourself. I think if you scroll down, it'll show his different books. Yeah, Choose Yourself is only 99 cents on Kindle. He is a big believer in just putting out amazing content and getting it into people's hands as easily as possible. So for 99 cents, you can get 2 of his books on Kindle, which is pretty amazing. His website is jamesaltucher.com. I think he has a few websites, and I think a lot of them are linked together now. I would check out the Altucher Report too, for those of you who are interested in business. He has worked with a lot of the biggest hedge funds. He's managed massive business accounts. His story's amazing. So check out his website. You can see a lot of his writing is under different topics is linked to his site. And then, of course, you can find him on LinkedIn. I know he's usually very happy to connect, even though he is a humongous, I haven't used that word in a while, LinkedIn influencer. So make sure you check him out on LinkedIn too. And again, give him a big thanks if you haven't yet. Find him on LinkedIn. Tell him thank you on LinkedIn. Tell him thank you on his Facebook page. Find him somewhere and then send him a personal thank you.
Show me the data.
All right, so we're going to go back to Show Me the Data. I just gave you a sneak peek of our next guest who will be on here very soon. Philip, very excited to have him on, but I want to finish the Show Me the Data section with Jeanette. Jeanette, are you still there? It was kind of the perfect.
Yeah.
It was kind of. Are you? Okay, good. You didn't blow up yourself
No.
anymore. All right,
One
so
explosion enough. Yeah.
it was a good transition. So I think some of the frameworks that James brought up, like this pyramid, I really liked it. Right. So if you are somebody who is experiencing this level of anxiety or depression, like anything, knowledge is power, and there's a system to get out of it. Now, clinical depression, clinical anxiety, of course, you want to get professional help. We're talking about if you're starting to feel anxious, before you reach that clinical level, and that's where I'll leave it in terms of the theoretical discussion of where that level is. There are some things that you can do. And one of the things that James talked about was getting away from negative people. Notice he started there, right? We're also tribal, like you said. People that we surround ourselves with influence us, and that's tied into this first figure. So there's a series of charts on the right that we didn't go into yet, Jeanette, and to remind everybody that this is an Inside Higher Ed review, and it's called The Mental Health Crisis of Grad Students. So what I'm seeing on the right is 5 different categories: provides mentorship, provides ample support, positive emotional impact, asset to your career, and feels valued by mentor. Blue bars indicate agree. They're right around the 35% level for anxiety. About the same, but a little bit lower for depression. And then the reddish bars are disagree. And it's around 50% for anxiety and also around 50% for depression. So can you walk us through what these values mean, Jeanette?
Yeah, of course. So for this figure, what they're sort of trying to highlight is the difference that having a positive mentor can have on the levels of anxiety and depression that PhD students were feeling. So when they had, or when they even thought, it doesn't even mean that that's actually the case, when they thought that their mentor was supportive and an asset to their career and they felt valued by their mentor, they experienced lower amounts of anxiety. So that's that 35%, and lower amounts of depression as well. But when they disagreed with that statement, when they felt that their advisor or their mentor were not helpful, they didn't feel valued, it was a bad situation, their levels of anxiety and depression went up to above, in some cases, above 50% of those people were experiencing those symptoms.
Yes. And so what's the overall takeaway here in terms of the influence that your PI or the people you're around has on you and your anxiety or depression levels?
Yeah, so they definitely can influence you, right? So I think that the big takeaway for me is that sometimes you can't control who your specific advisor is, but you can find other mentors. Kind of like what James was just saying, choose a different tribe, look somewhere else and find a mentor that you really can look up and that makes you feel valued, right? So you can find that positive relationship rather than relying on one that's built in for you that's not working.
Yeah, and I love that connection because most of us, again, you have put all of your feelings of success into the hands of just one tribe, academia. Not only that, but just one person, your PI, or a handful of people, your thesis committee. And if they don't like you on a certain day, you're going to feel crappy about yourself. But if you had multiple tribes, you got involved in different groups, not just student groups, we try to make a differentiation between like your red ocean network and your blue ocean network, right? A network that's outside of academia, doesn't include just other PhDs who are all kind of, very, I guess, voracious in terms of looking for jobs and in terms of being critical of data and very focused on just that academic tribe. Go out and find a different tribe. Get involved in business investing groups or architecture groups or art groups, whatever. Someplace where you can learn and where people will like you, so that even if you have a bad day in academia, it's like, so what? It's really that simple. And you might be thinking, well, I don't have time to do this. You're thinking that because you're still trying to make that one tribe happy. That one tribe, academia, is the center of your universe, maybe even one or two of the alphas, as James says, right? Whether it's your professor, thesis committee member, etc. Your success and happiness is completely dependent on that person, the leader of that tribe. You have to diversify, right? And I love that he used that word, because it's the same thing you would want to do for investing or stocks, something else James talks a lot about. You have to do that for your tribes too. So great tie in there. So this next figure is from a PubMed article. What is this? Is this frontal psychology?
I think it's Frontiers.
Frontiers. Okay, frontal could work. I was thinking the brain. Revisiting the link between job satisfaction and life satisfaction, the role of basic psychological needs. So, the main takeaway here, I know, is that job satisfaction and life satisfaction are linked now more than ever. And that's something else that James brought up. So can you break down what this figure means? Because what we're seeing here on the left is 3 boxes: life satisfaction, gender, age. On the right is job satisfaction. And there's some arrows going back and forth. Maybe you can walk us through this.
Yeah, of course. So this figure was a survey of almost 700 people, and it was actually done in Chile. So there's a lot of studies like this in Western culture, and so this one was really interesting, is it sort of like brings this story to everyone in the world. Like, it's trying to expand this idea of the connection between life satisfaction and job satisfaction, that it's not just a Western thing. And anyway, but the figure is looking at the influence of job satisfaction and on life satisfaction, and then also gender and age. Do those have any influence on your life satisfaction or your job satisfaction? And the big takeaway, like you just said, is that it's very clear. You can see there's an arrow pointing between them, that there was a correlation between life satisfaction and job satisfaction. And that was a statistically significant number, right?
Yes.
And so they looked again at the same thing to see, like, does your gender or your age influence your life satisfaction? And the answer was no, right? There's really no correlation there. And if there is, it's very small. And then they did the same thing with gender and age and looking at job satisfaction. So does your gender or your age influence the satisfaction of your job? And for gender, the answer was no. And if you look at age, it's slightly. There's a small connection. And I think that sort of makes sense, right? As we as you age, you sort of gain a better understanding of what exactly you want. Yeah. And I think that allows you to find higher satisfaction, rather than, not that your life changes that much, but sort of you understand what you want and you go find it. Yeah. And so that can lead to that bit of a change. But the big point is that your job satisfaction and your life satisfaction are linked, and it goes both ways as well. So The more satisfied you are in your job, the more satisfied you're going to be in your life, and the more satisfied you are in your life, the more satisfied you're going to be in your job. It's a really fun connection.
Yeah, and I it always reminds me of, different quotes like, it's not personal, it's business. Or I always think of this movie scene, I think it's from Erin Brockovich, where somebody's saying something to her about, it's just business, it's not personal. And she's saying, this is time away from my kids, this is, all these hours that I spent doing this. It's a myth that business and life are separate. And this data shows that. It's pretty significant if you think about it, no pun intended, because the p-values are actually significant. Life and job satisfaction are tied together. They're merged in today's world. We get a lot of our self-worth, purpose, etc. out of these things, and you need to acknowledge it. So if your life is feeling, crappy now, take a look at how things are going at work and vice versa. And so if you are not happy in academia now, your life is not going to be happy, right? That's why you might be experiencing anxiety, depression, etc., because it's a powerful influencer.
Yeah, and so many of us have been there, like at that place where you're struggling. Just I don't know, just to know, like we've all been there, right? I think it's like, especially this group of people, like all of us understand that frustration that you can feel in academia, and to know that a lot of times the reason that your whole life feels like that is just because of the work you're doing, right? So if you switch that up, if you give that a shot, you can totally change the entire trajectory of what you're feeling.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, so if your life is bad right now, stop the search. The search is over. It's probably your career. It's very likely. Start there. And if you need to change, go through those steps that James talked about. First, make sure you're not around negative people all the time. A lot of academic institutions, departments, labs, right, whatever, people go from being critical of the data and critical of the work and scrutinizing, discovery, to scrutinizing each other and to being critical of themselves and each other. And so if you're around those kind of people, you need to diversify your tribe, diversify your network. And then you have to get into that discovery mindset. That's one of the things I really like about James's writing is he's all about ideas and writing down 10 new ideas every day, even if they're ridiculous. They do this at some of the largest companies in the world, like Google. I forget what they call it, but they'll just get in a room and say, no idea is off limits. I remember I was reading an article on it. One of the ideas that came up during one of these meetings was, what if we said we want to have free internet for the entire world, and we just put up these Wi-Fi boxes on weather balloons into the sky? People are like, that's ridiculous, right? It's always our first reaction, but anything's possible. They actually have done this now, right? There's several places where they've had these balloons that have these Wi-Fi, I don't know what they're, routers or something into the sky, not into space and the satellites, but at a lower level, and give people free Wi-Fi. So anything is possible, and if you get into that discovery mindset, it opens you up to possibilities and opportunities and moves you mentally away from limitations. So I really like that. So one more figure here. Not an advanced figure, but really just 3 circles, and the title is
pretty simple.
Yeah, pretty simple. Even I can follow this one. Creating meaning and purpose at work. Okay, so the link we have here is from ResearchGate, but I think it's from Wiley Blackwell Handbook of Psychology of Positivity and Strengths-Based Approaches at Work. What I love about this is that there was a long time in psychology and science in general where it's like the science of happiness. This is ridiculous. You can't study this, etc. But of course you can, and there's real world effects to it. And it's a really blossoming field. But we're going to try to make it very tangible and practical here. The 3 circles, the inner circle says what work that makes you feel meaningful and has an identifiable point and purpose in the organization. The second circle, on the outside of this circle, says work that is in harmony with and helps provide meaning in a worker's personal life. So again, we're talking about how that connection happens between your work life and personal life. And then the final circle on the very outer ring is work that provides the opportunity to benefit others for some greater good. So you see a trend in terms of how the circles are expanding and what each circle influences. Maybe you could help us break down that trend.
Yeah, of course. So for me, this is sort of like, how do we find that job satisfaction that we just talked about, right? So we want job satisfaction so we can have a life satisfaction. How do we get it? Right? And it's about finding a place where you can do work that's meaningful to you. And then that starts with, in the middle, where that particular company has identified a mission. So the company has a mission, and your work has a place in that company's mission.
Yes.
Right? That's that first inner circle. The second one is that you agree with their mission, right? So you think that it's a good idea to do this mission and you feel like your work is helping get there. And then the last circle is that mission actually helps everyone, so that the mission is good for the whole world or the entire community that you're serving. And so those three things together, they call it the transcendence, right? So you like reach this third level of transcendence. But the idea is that you just get to a place where your job feels meaningful and purposeful, and that makes it satisfying.
Yeah, and this has been used in different kind of pop culture things. You know, it's called I think, who was it? The book is Start With Why, and it's like the golden circle or something. And it's like going from why to what to how. Really, here's the key takeaway, is that what you do for your career and what you do for your life and how you feel is connected to why you're doing it, your purpose. And purpose matters. And you want to get alignment of the purpose of what's going on at work with your purpose, and then having a purpose in the greater community. I will also say, let me reverse this. People can use this against you. And I think in academia, it's been used against a lot of PhDs because, you know, you're running your 5 millionth gel, and you're doing seriously what instruments are doing, like robots are doing in industry, but your PI or somebody's telling you, like, you're having a massive impact. This pipetting really matters, and you're changing the world with what you do, right? Like, what you're doing here matters. That's more important than what you're being paid. That's more important than whatever. So people will try to use purpose and meaning against you, and you have to decide for yourself if you're actually having the impact you want to have in the way you want to have it. Okay, don't just allow yourself to be a worker, somebody relegated to the corner of a lab or in industry. We talk a lot about that. Make sure that you are doing what you want to do and you're having the impact that you want to have, and ideally that impact is aligned with the company's impact. Any final thoughts, Jeanette?
Yeah, I think just one final thing is to do that, like to find those companies that align with your personal ideals or whatever they are, is informational interviews, right? Like do them. Do informational interviews and ask questions at your interviews, yes. Right? Be specific and ask those questions that matter to you to find out if it's a good fit. And if it's not, you can say no. That's, I think, the takeaway from this is exactly. You will find a job that's right for you.
Interview the companies, and even on your informational interviews, ask these purpose, these why questions. It's more important than ever. And guess what? You're going to be asked them. Most behavioral questions start with why, because why is a difficult topic to broach. So again, thanks, Jeanette. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Please thank
Happy
Jeanette.
Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Please thank Jeanette for her amazing costume, for being on with us for the Show Me the Data section. We really appreciate it, and for helping us tie in everything that we've talked about so far with James and beyond. I'm going to move to our next guest now. Our next guest is Philip Kruger. Very excited to have him on. I'm going to show his bio, and then we're going to bring him on live, and we're going to have a great discussion with him as well. Great show. Two excellent special guests. Philip Kruger did his BS at the University of, oh no, he can help me say this once we bring him on, Tübingen. And recently finished his PhD in immunology at the University of Oxford, UK. Probably heard of it. He is the author of the Nature article, Why It Is Not Failure to Leave Academia. This is a fantastic article. I'm going to show it on the screen here before we bring him on. It's about how PhD students can prepare for different careers and how lab heads can help. He's currently a career outreach fellow at the Career Services at the University of Oxford, where he runs career development activities and gives presentations and workshops quite frequently. His LinkedIn page is here. Go to his LinkedIn page. We'll put it in the chat box. Connect with him. He's a great author, is a great resource, a great advocate for PhDs. Very excited to have him on. His article that I want all of you to check out, we'll put this link in the chat box and wherever you're watching this, wherever we are live streaming. Why It Is Not Failure to Leave Academia. Here's how PhD students can prepare for different careers and how lab heads can help. Hi, Philip. How are you? Can you see me okay?
Yes, I can see you. Thanks. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So,
I'm sorry I haven't put on a costume. I didn't know about this.
It's all right. I think we're all have a little bit of a mad scientist in it. As Jeanette just put it on the outside. So, my first question to you is, what inspired you to write this article that's been so well received?
Well, mainly conversations with people around me in my research environment literally over the 4 years of my PhD. talking to other students, seeing other students and how much time they spend on the bench while I went off to do other things, but also talking to, having conversations or overhearing comments from group leaders, from senior academics. I heard one person say that only those people who are not good enough for industry, for academia, go into industry. And I thought, how can a person in such a senior position who has spent so much time in research say something that's so far away from reality? How can we allow a culture like this to exist? And that was really when I started thinking about writing something that hopefully can help to change this culture.
Yeah, how many of you who are watching here have felt a disconnect between what a lot of lab heads or PIs or thesis committee members think and say about the career path or options for PhDs and what's actually available, like what's actually happening in reality, right? A lot of this is due to, a lot of you saying yes, a lot of this is due to, confirmation bias. Something also in psychology called justification, self-justification. You get this culture that perpetuates itself by saying, oh, the academic career path is still there, plenty of options, you just have to work harder to be a professor, for example. It's not based on the data or how things are now, it's just based on somebody who chose that path, justifying it to themselves, perhaps without knowing it. So I love the article, you definitely have to check it out. One thing I know that the article touches on too is what other paths are available for PhDs. And I think you did a great job of discussing and importantly how to decide on career paths and how to gather data on options. And I know you do something called basically a perpetual pros and cons list, right? That you keep without
Yes.
as you hear about different positions, etc. Can you talk about this perpetual pros and cons list?
Yeah, it's essentially more or less a kind of diary, but not on a daily basis, but based on experiences. If I have a very bad day in the lab, a frustrating experience, or just had a very boring week of analyzing data, or whatever it is really, whatever task it was, I reflect on that kind of thing and I just make a note of what have I done, why did I not enjoy it, and then that list accumulates over years really. And at the same time, you make a note if you have a really exciting day, if you have a very interesting conversation, a really elevating discussion with someone, a personal connection. And that way, for example, I found that I really had this kind of feeling of excitement whenever I came back from conferences, whenever I had interactions with lots of people, discussions about science, but not really when I was doing the science myself. When I was in the lab for a whole week just doing experiments, not talking to anyone, I never really enjoyed those parts of the work.
Yeah, and that kind of, really intel on yourself is valuable. Like, are you even cataloging what you enjoy or not enjoy? And I think PhDs, in large part, we can get distracted by certain things, right? We can get distracted by a job title that sounds impressive. We can get distracted by an option that just seems like it might get us recognition or make us seem important. I think we're more at risk than that because most of us are driven and we want to have an impact, right? So we kind of intensity match impact to...
It's very easy. I mean, research is a lot of fun, and people go into research because they enjoy it, and it's super exciting. And then you get bogged down into it, and suddenly 2 years have gone by, and you haven't even thought about what to do next, or what you might be good at, or what you like. So I like to break down career thinking into these 4 different steps, really, where you have to start with a self-assessment. You have to understand who you are, what you're good at, and what you like to do. And I think that's already where a lot of people fail in terms of just moving on into the next position along the chain, starting a postdoc, never really thinking not even if they would ever make it to professorship, which obviously most won't, but also not thinking if they would actually like that job and if they would be good at it, if it would be the best fit for them personally. And then there are a lot of things you can do to find out. And I think a PhD is a good time for exploration and to do other things on the side and try to really be reflective and understand what kind of tasks am I good at, where are my strengths, and what do I enjoy is just as important.
Yeah, and notice, just to jump in, those two things are both in your transition plan, right? So for some of you are like, I don't have time to dig deeper into who I am. I don't have time for this self-analysis, my strengths and weaknesses. we tend to be a bit practical and we think, I just want to get to that job right now. Like, I know what I'm doing, whatever, but that, people like that tend to get into jobs that aren't a good fit. They leave 6 months later, they're not happy. Don't let that be you. Do a little bit of self-analysis.
What you just said earlier in the data about life satisfaction and job satisfaction, these kind of things, job satisfaction, career success, that's a personal definition. That's a different thing for everyone. It might mean financial rewards for some people. It might mean work-life balance and family for other people. It might mean a certain geography or a certain type of job where you interact with lots of people or where you don't interact with people. But you have to find out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
No one else can tell you these kind of things.
And I'm just making sure, I think I was off video when I was talking. How about now? Can you guys see me when I talk? Is it jumping to whoever's talking, or is it still spot lighting? Both of us. Oh, okay. So we're good to go now. I think, the self-analysis part is something that is missing. The last kind of line of questioning I wanted to talk to you about is what kind of things that you can do. You've discussed this before, you've written about it, whether it's volunteering or organization, organizing events, adding value in some way that will help you have more experiences and figure out what you want. Like, if you do the self-analysis, you still don't know what you want, what's the end of the equation, the last steps, the things you can do to expose yourself to new things?
Well, I think taking initiative and organizing events, for example, and going out there, doing things, being on committees, exploring the outside world, within or outside of the university, really, that is already part of the self-assessment, because you get to know yourself better by doing these kind of tasks. If you've never had responsibility for a budget as the treasurer of a committee, you won't know if that's something you might like. And that's the first step, really. But it can obviously also help you develop networks, talk to people, and that's really the second part of the career development for me, is learning about the world, trying to figure out what jobs are out there, what do people do, what is it on a day-to-day basis. And I think for that, you can read as much online as you want, but you will never really get down to the day-to-day experience. So you really have to talk to people. I really like this kind of idea of information interviews even with strangers, but also just at conferences or in your environment. Observe where people are, what they do, and whether you might enjoy that kind of role.
Fantastic. Well, Philip, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Please say thank you to Philip in the chat box. I do want to show his article one more time. Please go find Philip on LinkedIn, connect with him there. We'll put the link in the chat box for you again. Please make sure that you also go to Nature, Why It Is Not Failure to Leave Academia. Read Philip's article, share it online. Very powerful article. And please thank him for his time in the chat box, wherever you see him live on social media too. Thank you, Philip. Really great to have you, and
thanks a lot for having me.
Enjoyed everything you said. Happy Halloween. Cheers. Fantastic. 2 great interviews so far. We have a call-in now, Mary, I think. Is that right? Perhaps. Barrios. Second time's a charm.
We could see about that. I thought we were going to do transitions and switch to the private show.
Let's see. Marios, are you okay to come on now and ask your question? Are you good? Can you hear me? Oh, you're on mute. And then we can switch over. Let me unmute you. You're a little bit silent. It's all right. I don't think I can hear him. Well, we got video this time. That's good.
Try now.
I hear you quietly. Maybe try without the the headphones. Sometimes it'll work without the headphones. Marios, if you want to take those out. Let's see if we can get you on.
Hello?
There we go. I can hear you now.
Oh, can you? Fantastic.
Yes. How are you?
The headset. I hope the quality of the sound is good now.
You're good to go. So thanks for coming on. I'm excited to hear your question.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for insisting.
Yeah, I'm happy to exist. So I know we tried to get you on last show, but let's hear your question.
Yeah, I would like to follow up on last week's question, which is like how to identify the ideal job for me. And I think we've been through that many times, and I know I keep on asking those things. But on one thing, and based on Philip's discussion just before me, it was like you have to look inside, like some time of introspection to find what is your unique selling point, right? What is your personality? What are the traits that make you a fantastic scientist? And what is the niche, the specific niche that you have to identify that you are incredible at? And on the other hand is the rest of the world, which is the industry and all the positions inside there. So my question is, where do I begin? Like I look at myself to find what makes me incredible and then try to go out to sell it, or I just go to the world first, see what they want, and then I try to convince them that I am good at that. Or I do those things in parallel.
Great question. So I think it's always going to be a little bit in parallel, but let me break it down for you, and I'll try to unify a lot of what James said with what Philip said that goes along with our kind of cheeky methodology for this. The biggest mistake that a lot of PhDs make is they try to find a job title or something out in the world that's appealing and then fit themselves to that. That's a mistake because your life satisfaction, your career satisfaction are closely linked. So what we recommend is figure out the professional lifestyle you want first. And this is what the transition plan in the program in the association takes you through, is figuring out what drives you, what are your strengths and weaknesses, what does your perfect day look like, what do you want to get up and do actually on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, even if it's a general idea. What are the key outcomes you have to achieve to get there, what are your priorities you need to live by, etc. So that's the simplest way to say it. Now, going back to what Philip and James said, you have to start deeper on the pyramid, right, at the lower bottom, more foundational level on the pyramid, like James said in his example. Along with what Philip said too, is that deeper self-analysis. What that means is that ask yourself the difficult questions. You know, the strengths and weaknesses that you have, where you've failed in the past, where you've succeeded, what patterns are there in those successes and failures. What do other people think that you're good at, right? Get some feedback from people. Ask those tough questions. Get away from people who are going to hold you back and are negative and put you down. Get around other people that are positive so you have that good foundation. Then go to that higher level of the pyramid, start coming up with ideas, right? That's what James said. Create ideas, get into a discovery mindset of all the possibilities and options that are out there so you stop thinking in terms of limitations. For Philip, in terms of the language that he used is, you know, start making a pros and cons list, right? Things that you like, don't like, something actionable. And then the final piece is, James said on the top of the pyramid, close to the very top, is evaluating those micro skills. What do companies actually need? Not the big general skills a lot of us think about, such as business, but the micro skills like, you know, project management, maybe even a little bit deeper, hitting a timeline, hitting a budget, execution in XYZ area. Think about the micro skills, and like Philip said too, get exposed to some of these other skills and stuff by getting out there and going to different types of events, etc. Talk about them, figure out if you would actually enjoy them. So to answer your question overall, again, you got to start with the deeper stuff first, the self-analysis, figuring out what you want, the professional lifestyle. What do you want to wake up and what do you want to have your 8 to 10 hours of working time look like? And then fit a job title to that, not the other way around. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming.
On what you said.
Sorry, what?
I have to reflect on what you said and what Philip and James said.
Perfect. Yeah, hopefully I was able to bring it together a little bit. We'll have the highlights of this show out too, so you and others can review. Thank you for coming on, Marios. I appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting.
Great to have Marios on. Please thank Marios for coming on in the chat box to ask his questions. A fantastic question, and it tied in very nicely to what we were talking about today. If you have any follow-up questions to that, let us know in the chat box. If you want to come on, let us know. Mary, I think we're going to go to the members-only portion of the show now. What do you think?
Yep, that time.
All right, so for those of you watching us publicly, thank you for joining. We are live every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on our Facebook page, facebook.com/mycheekyscientist. You can also see us stream live on YouTube, our Cheeky Scientist YouTube page. If you message us on Facebook using Facebook Messenger, just message us the word resume. We'll send you our resume template. It's that easy. Or you can go to cheekyscientist.com. One last thing, make sure that you go to our resume webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is a complete 2019 guide according to 50 top biotech and pharma employers for PhDs only. We've got a lot of great stuff here, a lot of new stuff. Make sure that you sign up for that. You have to sign up to join. Thank you all for joining us for another Cheeky Scientist radio show. If you want to learn more about our Cheeky Scientist Association, get access to our members-only portion of the show, go to phdsgethired.com, phdsgethired.com. Don't forget to find our special guests online and connect with them. They want to connect with you. You need to start expanding your network. Go to James Altucher's LinkedIn profile, Facebook page, connect with him. Go read his free books on Amazon. Reinvent Yourself. They're free on Kindle. Choose Yourself. Make sure you do the same thing for Philip Kruger. Go read his article on Nature and go to his LinkedIn profile and connect with him there. We'll see you all next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another Cheeky Scientist radio show. Thank you, everyone, for watching us on the public version of our show. Now we're off to our members-only portion. Okay, so thank you. Thank you also, you two, for joining us. We'll see you next week at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.